There was a time when we believed that if we just tracked enough, optimized enough, supplemented enough, cold plunged enough, we could outmaneuver biology. That if we just tried hard enough, we could engineer invincibility. Well, that era might be over. Welcome back to Health Coach Radio. Today we're talking about something that honestly has been building for a while. And I think it will be kind of an unpopular opinion, but I do hope you'll listen with an open mind. I'm talking today about the so-called death of wellness optimism. There's an article circulating about this idea that we're witnessing the end of a cultural era where people believe that with enough optimization or enough tracking or enough gadgets, data points, supplementation, protocols, that we could essentially engineer our way to invincibility. And I really do want to unpack this, not from a clickbait standpoint, but from a professional standpoint, because if you're a health coach, this matters. This isn't just a cultural commentary, it's a potential market shift, a psychological shift, and a possible maturation of the entire wellness industry, which I think is a little overdue. So the death of wellness optimism refers to a cultural shift away from the belief that a constant self-optimization, expensive wellness trend, and a relentlessly positive mindset can perfectly control health or prevent illness. As of 2026, consumers are moving from wellness optimism, the belief that you can fix yourself through products and habits, to wellness overwhelm. This is characterized by burnout from over-optimization and a craving for sustainability. I'm seeing this in my coaching conversations every single day. And I may have mentioned this in a previous Health Coach Radio episode, but in the last calendar year, when I get on a discovery call, a consultation with a prospective client, their overwhelm and burnout is the number one thing they want help with. They're craving something simpler and more sustainable and more real. Contextual note, there are a lot of biohackers out there, and you might be a coach who is looking to help individuals hyper-optimize. And if so, then keep doing you, because those clients are still out there for you. But if you work with regular people, which I think most of us do, then this will be worth thinking about. So there are a few key factors driving the death of wellness optimism. The new term floating around is wellness overwhelm, and that tracks. People are tired. They're tired of counting, measuring, optimizing, monitoring the conflicting information every single day, every single podcast they listen to. They're tired of reinventing themselves every 90 days when a new philosophy comes to the forefront. There's just a fatigue from being in a constant state of self-improvement. I've heard it said that we have access to more information than ever before, but our discernment didn't grow commensurate to that. What I mean by that is we can be confronted with information, ideas, concepts, plans, protocols quicker than ever. But our ability to discern good from bad, right from wrong, pertinent from impertinent did not grow alongside this rush of information. Performance culture bled into wellness, and it created this underlying message that, you're never quite enough, keep upgrading, keep upgrading. And that's exhausting, especially when you're maybe midlife and you've been tackling this for decades, or maybe when you're raising kids or you're building a business, you have an important career path. I'm thinking about our ideal clients here that we work with. They're human beings having a lived experience, a multi-textural lived experience that doesn't just factor in wellness optimization. They have other things to do. They're already stretched. So at some point, people just start asking, what if I just lived? Could I just live in my body? Does it have to be this fraught? There's burnout from optimization. People are just tired of tracking every metric. Steps, sleep, calories, carbs. They're ditching wearable technology because they're feeling over-optimized. I don't have a data point on this. I don't know if wearables are on a decline. A lot of this is just conjecture, which we have to keep in mind, right? Just because there's an article written about this doesn't mean it's true, but it would be worth thinking about. There's performance fatigue. Wellness has evolved from simply feeling good to this rigid daily to-do list where failure to follow the strict routine feels like a personal moral failing, a character defect. And this can lead to anxiety rather than health. I see this in my clients all the time. And to be honest with you, again, I haven't seen this before in my almost 15 years of health coaching. My clients are so bothered by how imperfect they're executing that I actually think it's holding them back from wellness. I had a client say, I've been so dialed in on my nutrition. I've been perfect on my lifestyle inputs. I don't understand why I'm not seeing more results. And my hunch was, I think you're stressing out about this too much. I mean, that's a hunch. it could feel easier. I hate to say this, but stay with me on this. Don't freak out, but I think there's a saturation. The wellness industry has reached a point of saturation where consumers are just exhausted by constant trends and content, and they're seeking simpler, more sustainable practices. So when I say the wellness industry has reached a saturation point, what I mean is all the overwhelming nonsense has reached its fever pitch, and the wellness consumer might be turning their back on that, looking for something simple and sustainable. And the good news is health coaching could not be more simple or sustainable, depending on how you do it. Again, I'm speaking to the health coach working with the normal, regular person, health consumer who simply wants to feel better, live a little longer, have more energy, live their lives happy and vibrant. So those people really are seeking very simple, sustainable practices. I do think sometimes, and I'm guilty of this as well, just following a lot of the biohacker types and the hyper-optimization types, you start to believe that that's what we should all be doing. But there's nothing in me that wants to do that. That's all pretend. That's just, I'm being culturally influenced. So there's an awakening, right? I think people are waking up to the fact that they don't really want to do everything. They don't want to drop everything and devote their whole lives to wellness pursuits. They're wondering, are there some simple basics that I can do that would get the job done? And there is. Another thing that's collapsing is performative wellness. So cold plunges that look so cool on Instagram. Man, we saw those all the time a few years ago. Just guys in cold plunges talking to camera. Cold plunges look cool on Instagram. Going to bed early doesn't. Red light therapy looks really futuristic, but putting together a meal of unprocessed whole foods does not. Peptide stacks feel advanced, but like taking a walk after dinner doesn't. You know what I mean? The unsexy pillars of health have always been sleep, resistance training, whole food, unprocessed food, sunlight, social connection, emotional regulation, movement, that kind of thing. But those don't scale as luxury products. It's not a spectacle like a vibration plate. And now consumers are seeing through the spectacle of that. They're realizing that the most effective behaviors are free, the most powerful changes are boring, the most sustainable routines are quiet, and that realization will begin to destabilize an industry that's built on novelty. Well, here's good news. Health coaches actually don't play in the realm of novelty. Now, you might, again, I add this caveat, you might be in the realm of peptides and vibration plates and red light therapy. That might be your thing. But just so you know, the health consumer is turning a little side eye to that. Do I really need all this gadgetry? What if I focus on the basics? And I just think that's where health coaches really thrive. And I've always thought that. How lucky are we? Our scope of practice enables us to work on the absolutely boring basics of behaviors. Sleep, movement, resistance training, whole food, sunlight, social connection, like all of the stuff that we can work on is actually the stuff that works. We don't need to overstep our scope of practice and play doctor with all kinds of gadgets and supplement stacks. The basics work. And I think the health consumer, it seems as though the health consumer is sort of looking back now and saying, maybe I should just get the basics working. I wonder if there's some way I can get help with the basics. Ding, ding, ding. That's where you come in. The wellness industry has often prioritized wellness alternatives. Okay, so it's like we're pushing these alternatives. Like this is a good example, a very specific example that I run into a lot. My clients are consuming protein supplements to get their protein needs met. When protein food exists, you just eat another egg at breakfast. There's protein food. You don't need to go and get supplements. We're jumping over the basics to get to the advanced tech. So like we're jumping over the basics and landing in a sauna. We're jumping over the basics and splashing into a cold plunge. We're jumping over the basics and just making it rain supplement stacks that with dubious claims, completely unregulated supplements. We're jumping over the unsexy pillars of health, sleep, exercise, nutrition, stress management, all these things. Sometimes the focus has been on the aesthetic or social spectacle of wellness rather than the genuine long-term health improvements. I really do run into this a lot because I'm such a boring basic girl. I would probably be the opposite of a biohacker, to be honest with you. So this is my perspective, but I continuously have to remind my clients that being a optimally healthy person is pretty boring. It's really not flashy. It's amazing, right? Oh my gosh, we get to be vibrantly healthy in an amazingly healthy body, potentially good longevity, depending on how things go. But in the day-to-day, it's not flashy. It's not Instagrammable. I mean, I'm on Instagram. I get most of my business from Instagram. That's where I do most of my content marketing, but I'm not showing myself doing extravagant things. I'm simply talking about the basics. The basics over and over again for almost 15 years and counting. And now I think the wellness industry, the wellness consumer is coming back to that. And we are going to be there to meet them when they arrive. There's also a growing realization that the most effective wellness protocols, sleep, sun, movement, all the things, are inexpensive, while a high-cost product is mostly marketing. I mean, how many gadgets do we have to buy? And it's interesting, as a health coach in private practice, maybe you've run into this where a client will say, boy, it's sure expensive to work with a health coach. And it's sort of like, well, expensive compared to what? Compared to the tens of thousands of dollars maybe people have spent on gadgets and supplements and retreats and various tools and gadgetry that are collecting dust and didn't move the needle. I think about health coaches who are charging premium prices for their services, as you should. And this idea that this isn't an item that you must feel some obligation to use to get your money's worth. This is skill development. You're giving your clients skills. It's like private tutoring. Do you know what I mean? If you wanted to learn the violin and you hired a private tutor, you probably would get to violin mastery sooner than if you just bought a bunch of gadgets and online courses to teach you the violin. So we get to be the tutor, the guide, the partner that is nurturing somebody to a lifelong change. And I just don't think a gadget does that. I've stopped wearing gadgets. I'm gadgetless. I lost my Oura Ring. I don't like wearing the Whoop. I don't want to know everything about everything all the time. I want to trust that I know how to eat and move and live to sustain the amazing wellness that I've achieved. And I want my clients to feel the exact same sense of liberation and freedom that I feel. I feel really powerfully about this. Something that came up in this article is this rejection of toxic positivity. So instead of pretending to be happy all the time, there's this rise in what's referred to as tragic optimism, which accepts the inevitable pain and limitations of life. You know, pain, guilt, death, despair. I know, dark topics, right? But as powerful as a gratitude practice, an affirmation practice is, we are still going to encounter deep struggle in our lives. Sorry for being a bummer. It's a good example of how we can say, well, I tried affirmation. It was all going well until my dad died. And then it all went to heck in a handbasket. That kind of thing, right? Like we are almost being lobotomized from feeling into our human lived experience. We've outsourced it to the gadgetry of it all. We've almost cyborged ourselves. I just turned cyborg into a verb. Try to keep up. People are moving away from like unrealistic, forced positivity toward more of an authentic approach that allows for negative emotions while still seeking hope. So it's like the two can coexist. I can be a happy person seeking wellness, and I can also have struggle in my life. How do those two things coexist? I think the idea of peaceful coexistence between being somebody who's trying to optimize their wellness and also just being a kind of flawed human having a lived experience is really where we need to land. This is actually where I want to elevate the conversation a little bit, because wellness optimism often merged with toxic positivity. The message became, stay positive, optimize hard, and nothing bad will happen. You'll be ahead of the curve. And that's not psychologically mature, actually. Viktor Frankl wrote about something called tragic optimism. So he wrote about this tragic optimism philosophy, the idea that life inevitably includes pain, guilt, and death. And you can't biohack your way out of those. So what are you going to do when they inevitably show up? You can live meaningfully in their presence. That's different from denial, and it's different than forced positivity. It's grounded hope. It's real. And I think culturally we're moving toward that. So less fantasy, more realism, maybe more acceptance of imperfection, more acceptance of limits. And paradoxically, that might create better health. I go back to my client who's really, really very focused on how perfect she can be. And I think her perfection is holding her back from the optimal human expression of what it is to be well. So what replaces wellness optimism? Quiet consistency. This is what they're saying. That this is the new, more realistic era that wellness is focusing on. Quiet consistency. So things like sustainable effort, quiet consistency over intense, unsustainable, and often expensive routines. The intensity and the expense are the two things that make some protocol unsustainable. Any seasoned health coach will have had this conversation on a consultation discovery call with somebody who says, well, I tried this and it worked for a while, but it was unsustainable. What good is that? What good is that? When we're thinking about long-term health, population health, what good is it to have people jumping to very intense protocols that they can only withstand for a short period of time, not even long enough to get or maintain the results? I don't see the point. Like, we have to toe that line. That's our responsibility to point that out. Seems like that wasn't going to work for you. What if the complete opposite might be the thing that works? Seems like that really strict diet didn't work for you. What if a simpler diet worked for you? Seems like getting up at 4 a.m. to go to the gym didn't work for you. What if we found a time that felt more reasonable for you? Seems like walking 20,000 steps a day is hard to fit into your schedule. What if we could find a step count or a movement goal that fit into your life better? Sustainable effort. It has to feel easy. I say this all the time. How can we make this feel as easy as possible so that it's utterly unquittable? That's the sustainable effort idea, right? We got process over spectacle. Just glorifying the boring daily habits rather than chasing the fleeting miracles. I'm personally very excited to see the end of this, if this is in fact true. Again, this is just an article that came across my desk. Hard to say if it's actually true or not, but I just wanted to start this conversation and think through this with you. But I've referred to this for a little while now as the miracle economy. My clients are in the miracle economy. They're looking for the little fantastic, flashy miracle, the trendy thing, and they're wasting their whole lives on that, quite frankly. So I'm out here just repetitively glorifying the boring daily effective habits, and I have been forever. And lo and behold, they've always worked. And ideally, the health consumer is going to come back to this. You know, the elephant in the room here is AI, which is a topic that you hear about a lot on like health coaching industry podcasts. What does AI mean for health coaches? Are we going to be out of a job? Who knows, right? But for now, everyone's a little sketched out about AI. Everyone's a little nervous about the robots of it all, I think. I'm generalizing. So, you know, a person might look at their vibration plate and say, do I need technology to run my human body? Am I outsourcing my humanness to a technology? Wait, I don't want to do that. What could I do instead? There's this idea of internal listening that we're hoping to see re-emerge. Listening to one's own body instead of relying on data from apps or wearables. That would be nice. That we can work with. Now, granted, health coaches can work with data as well. Many of us do. It's great. It's cool to have it. What if the health consumer wants to stop tracking it, though? Are you ready for that? I love this idea of quiet consistency because quiet consistency doesn't photograph well. It doesn't trend. It doesn't spike dopamine. It doesn't go viral. It just looks like strength training twice a week for the next 3 months, 3 years, 10 years. Oh, look, I've developed strength. My body is resilient. Cool. Eating protein at breakfast, taking a walk after dinner, going to bed at a reasonable bedtime, managing our stress to the best of our abilities without dramatizing it. And letting some metrics go, letting some technology go, unoutsourcing the experience of being in a body to something else. So what I like about this idea of quiet consistency is that it's not like heroic, but it's durable. And durability beats intensity every time. Durability beats intensity every time. It's like, imagine sprinting to the start of the marathon. You're going to be too tired for the marathon. Life is a marathon. You got to conserve resources so that you can get to the end of it. And I think we're spinning out on resources by over technologying wellness a little bit. My bias is coming in strong here. I know I'm probably alienating a lot of tech-oriented health coaches, but that's okay. Let's all think through this logically. By the way, let's not confuse this. Research still strongly supports a general dispositional optimism. So people still have hope. People are still future-oriented. People still believe that effort matters. Optimism generally isn't the problem. It's this magical invulnerability thinking that's the problem. There's the difference between I can influence my health and I can control everything. So mature health culture embraces the first and releases the second. Now let's bring this home. If you're a health coach, you need to understand this shift because the era of selling optimization theater may be ending, depending on who you work with. Again, you work with a hyper-optimization crowd, then stick with it. You work with normies, regular people, they may be moving away from the hyper-optimization. Are you ready to go with them? Clients are increasingly skeptical of endless supplement stacks. I mean, how many bottles of supplements are people going to have in their supplement cupboard before they realize that none of them are working? They're skeptical of extreme protocols, massive restriction, hypervigilance. They're getting a little skeptical of constant lab chasing. And what they're craving now is clarity, simplicity, sustainability, relief, freedom. They don't really want another dashboard. They want peace. They want simplicity. And that changes your role because you're not an optimization technician. You're a behavior change specialist. You're a guide who helps people build habits they can sustain forever. That's a more mature profession. It has staying power. Trends fizzle out. Trends move on. This requires a maturity and, frankly, deeper skill, because you have to be an exceptional coach. You have to be able to get into the human lived experience with the human in order to facilitate this. Are you ready? Because we can't just lean on the technology. We can't just lean on the data. We can't just adjust the macros. We have to be in relationship with humans, human to human. We may be moving from biohacking to biology, control to stewardship, coexistence, spectacle to practice. I don't see this as a decline. I see it as a correction. Health is not performance art. It's a long game, and long games require steady players that know what they're doing. And that's our chance to help our clients know what they're doing and trust in what they're doing, because they're getting the feedback from their own body, not from some external force. The death of wellness optimism is not the death of health. It is the death of fantasy health. The death of the idea that you can outmaneuver mortality. And in its place, we might be entering something more grounded, more honest, more sustainable, more adult. Now, and if you're willing to evolve as a coach, this is an invitation to practice what we preach, which is consistency, humility, long-term thinking, autonomy, self-efficacy. This is where the next era of coaching lives. This is where coaching has always been. I think we got distracted. I think the industry got distracted, but the industry's pivoting back, and coaches are here waiting to help humans make human health moves together. So thanks for listening. I'll see you next time on Health Coach Radio.